Well, Year Six, thank you for today gathering your data about how we consume electricity in school, what's consuming electricity, and doing a bit of an audit on those things that are using power on a daily basis here at school. You will see in a moment the explanation about how to use sheets to produce data, or sorry, I should say collect data, and then produce a visually, aesthetically, mentally more accessible way of looking at all that data. But before we do that, I want to show you, just go over the types of questions that were generated by you all throughout the lesson today, and the things I want you to think about in the next fortnight. Um, the big one was, how much power do classroom and school items consume daily, monthly, yearly? So the question that you guys came up with was this one, mostly yourselves. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see maybe daily what it is, monthly and yearly, because you might be able to kind of go off on little tangents here, and maybe, I mean, it's a little bit difficult if you're not doing it across the whole year, but you might do things depending on the weather. So you can change the questions yourself a little bit, um, answer them in a way that, geez, cannot spell. Um, you can change the questions to suit you, what you want to investigate a little bit more. So how much power do classroom and school items consume? I mean, for me personally, I'd like to see monthly, because then you might be able to get something closer to what you would be paying per month. Okay, because I'm not quite sure how the school pays electricity, but I know for home you pay your electricity bill in quarters, so every 3 months. So if you can work out more monthly, I should say, what you're consuming. So over a winter period, you would assume that during the winter months, your monthly consumption of power would be, what you consume in June would be pretty similar to July, because the weather's fairly similar there. And why you'd want to find out that stuff? Well, as I said to, I think, most of the groups, you don't want to spend more money than you have to. And it's also about being conscious of, wasting power and overuse of things, and being a little bit more environmentally conscious, because we're talking about finite resources here. So you can focus in on a specific classroom if you like. So the differences obviously between a year two classroom and one of your year six classrooms, I would say they'd be vast, in that you guys all have one-to-one devices, whereas the year two classrooms, at any given time might have 8 iPads in there, and they're not using them probably near as much as you guys use your Chromebooks, that's for sure. So you might even do both and do a little bit of a comparison, and look at the energy use when you compare between year two and year six, and talk about maybe how year six could aspire to only use as much as year two without sacrificing the use of technology. Lots of things to think about here, and kind of go off on your own little investigation. You will need to figure out how is power measured, so the units of measurement that we measure electricity in, and stuff like this is a simple Google search really, but don't just go with one answer. Kind of investigate it. Look at power companies' websites. They like to do heaps of stuff for students in schools, to give you information about electricity and how to use it right and stuff like that. And then figure out, like, once you know how much power is measured, can we measure how much power we're using here at the school? So how and with what? Now this will be an approximation, so we're not going to get exactly here. You can get someone to come in and do an actual power audit of your house or a business and give you a very, very close reading about how much power you're using, but we just want an approximation here, okay? We just want to get a bit of an idea. I might be able to match this up some data about what, like looking at school bills and stuff like that, about how much we have to pay and how much technically electricity we do consume, and look at it over different months. But again, you can go online and find out this information, and work out approximations, and then use that to work out, based on your data that you collected from around the school. Say you did the year four buildings, you could start working out how much power is consumed within, say, 4 Red. And And then looking at it in a sense of dollars as well, each day per classroom per year. You could do some really funky stuff with that. You might go, oh yeah, per classroom, this is how much we're using. And then you might average that out amongst the total amount of students in the school. You could do some really cool mathematics like dividing and sharing and fractions and stuff here, percentages. Even do some hypotheticals. If we save this much money, this is what we could purchase. So I think I gave you guys the example of some football goals. Like if we could save some money there. And remember, it's not just about the money too. It's about the environmental factors. So you might talk about how much CO2 would be saved from going into the atmosphere if we didn't use that much power and things like that. So the big thing we want to work towards is, can we reduce this use of power? Now, I'm going to say yes, but how and how much is going to be entirely up to you, what you come up with, what practical steps could be implemented. And we really need to go, I guess, a little bit further with this, because we spoke about the fact that we need to, we could just switch off lights and stuff all the time. And I mean, that's a simple way, but we spoke about the realistic, we spoke about it realistically around the school that I'm not going to be too concerned about the lights in the Year 6 building because I'm hardly ever up there, and I can't be running around all day checking lights. But there should be other things in place too, in ways which we can limit the use of power. So think about very specifically about how we use devices. Are there certain things we can tweak that would reduce the amount of power? Even some smart things about how we can still stay comfortable in our classrooms without the use of heaters and air conditioners. It's entirely up to you where you go with this. So lots to think about there on each of these three slides. But again, I want you to take it in any direction you want. I really want to see what you guys are thinking about and come up with here. You might even find examples of businesses or even things that you do at home about how you reduce power and save money and things like that, and bring some of those ideas into this investigation. Keep watching the next part of this video. It's about using spreadsheets, how we're going to put your data together, and I want you to construct your own spreadsheets to present the data that has been collected today. So let's get into that. Alright, so let's get into having a look at the Google Sheets and how we can use some of the data that we've collected recently for our little electricity audit, or for anything else. Collect the data and present it in a way that's meaningful, visually pleasing, and easy to understand. That's what it's all about all the time. So go into your Google account, and again, usually where you access G Suite apps, and we're going to open Sheets. And let's just go with New Sheet. So if you haven't used Sheets before, and this is all very unfamiliar with you, basically you've got columns A through to Z, and then even more if you'd like to add more, along your horizontal axes, and then down on the vertical axis you've got numbers. Okay, so you can kind of coordinate where you put data. For example, this highlights here on the left, on the left and the top, this cell is B4. Okay, and it's important to remember what the cells are, because sometimes you'll put formulas and stuff in there to make that cell do something different to the cell just above it. Anyway, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's have a look at some examples of the data that we've collected in relation to electricity around the school, and turn our spreadsheet into something a bit more meaningful. So start with lights. You can type that directly into the cell. Then you can do some of the normal things you usually do with many of the Google Doc stuff. Change the font. However, when it comes to Sheets, we're really not worried about making the font look pretty. It's really, I guess, a bit more of a professional tool. So fonts such as Arial are quite good, but fonts like this, not really necessary, to be honest. Let's change that back. Okay. All right, to have lights, let's be more specific, because we did speak about the need to identify specific types of electrical appliances and things within the school in order to get a better idea about how much power they might consume and their cost and things like that. So let's put fluoro lights here. Let's put down lights Let's put lamps, because I have a few lamps here in the incubator and there are a few more around the school. And let's just put normal bulbs there for now. We can be more specific later, that's totally fine. So some ways we could organise the information. We could have the classrooms here, so we might have 2 red, 2 white, 2 gold. If you did the year 2 buildings, obviously this would be a good one to do, and 2 blue. Alright, so let's have some imaginary numbers here. Let's just say, well, basically all those classrooms are exactly the same, except for I think 2 blue or 2 white at the end. So let's just put 28, 28, maybe 2 gold only had 24, and 28 there. Okay. Imaginary numbers here. I don't think there are any downlights in those rooms, but just for an example, I'm going to put different things down here. Lamps, just put 1, a few random numbers, 5 there. And bulbs, let's just put 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So we can turn that into a table. If I select all the cells, so click on the corner here, drag it, you can use the little highlight tool up here. And if I click on that, that's going to highlight every single row, column, line there. So click on that. Just looks a little bit neater. You can do other things just like you do when you're constructing a table, say in Google Docs. You can center text. You like to be nice and neat. You can change the colors of the cells within that column. Sometimes that's useful. Let's go back though. That's not really what I want to show you. So down here, like, we're talking about the need for having totals of things, and that's going to help us calculate the type of information to guide our inquiry further. So let's have a separate table just below here. I'm going to highlight these cells. Click on that. Cool. So let's just say I want to find out the total of all these classrooms here, but I do want the information laid out of the individual amounts here. I can make it so that this cell here, which we can see is B8, will automatically calculate all of these cells and then put the total there. Alright, so I guess at this level you could go, well, I could add up all 4 of those. Yep, totally understand. But wouldn't it be cool if you could reuse this sheet over and over again for different buildings? Let's just say, okay, that's 2 red. Let's do the same thing for 3 red, 3 white, 3 gold. You can make it so the cells kind of do the work for you, which is really why people use spreadsheets, use massive spreadsheets when they're calculating, budgets for millions of dollars for companies and stuff like that. But even at this level, it can certainly save us some time. So to make this cell add up the total of these cells, we can select it. And then you can see we have what's called, we'll put the little equal symbol, some of the formulas are popping up here. So the 2 that it's recommending straight away are the sum, so it'll give you the sum of a set of cells, or the average. We want the sum, which means, add them all together, what's the sum? I click on that. It's saying, do you want the sum of these cells, which is B3 to B6, do you want it to be displayed in B8? And I do, so I'm going to hit enter. You can see straight away, it automatically is adding up those numbers there and displaying it there. So if I change that to 50, that should go up by 22 and then read the total should be 130. So let's put 50 there, enter. There you go. So it does all the work for you, which is, it saves you a lot of time. And again, for what we want to do, this is going to help us make some calculations a lot quicker. So let's do the same thing down here. Let's make that, we want to make that the sum. And it's automatically kind of figuring out what we want. I don't want it to add C7 in, so I can just click up here and go, no, I only want it to be C6. And you see it's got the range correct. Click enter. Cool. Let's do the same thing here. Equals sum. Don't want it to be D7. I can just go D8. Whoop. Not even D8, let's have D6, enter, and then same thing down here. Let's just change that to E6. Cool. And you can see there, it's getting all the totals. We have the totals of fluoro lights, downlights, lamps, bulbs. If you wanted a complete total of all the lamps, you could have sum total, just an expression of all the lights. Click my little bold there. And we can make it so this cell here, which is E11, is the combination of all these totals. So let's do that. Let's make equals sum and select these cells. B3 to click on that again. Let's type it in manually, actually. It might be a bit better. I don't know what's going on here. So I want the range to be B8, starting at this cell here. So let's click B8 all the way over to E8. So let's do that there. There you go. I'm checking, is that the range of cells that you want to be the sum down there? Yes, it is. Enter. So there you go. It gives you the total amount of lights in all year 2. There are 169 lights according to this set of data. And then it gives you a breakdown here of the individual lights. Now this information, you can start generating all this information yourself based off the data that you've collected. You might want to add little things, different things. So for example, Chromebooks, printers, whatever, and start categorizing all of that stuff. Once you start generating your own sheets of information off small groups like this, then you can start sharing that information with other people and start really combining your data so we can get a whole campus perspective of how many lights there are. Because that's what we really want. We want a total of everything within the school so we can answer the questions that are just about to come up. So please have a play with this. Have a go of just using the sum formula. You can do a few little things like you can kind of jazz it up a bit with stuff like that, 2 red, 2 white, 2 gold. I'm not really that fussed about that stuff at this point. But if you get some time, you can play with that kind of stuff a bit. But again, if you put too many colours on there, it does become hard to read. And later on, I'll show you why maybe not putting colours in manually is a good idea, because you can actually make the cells change colour based on the number that's in them. So if you've got a certain threshold, if you say this cell you can't have it go over 40 and it ends up being 50, you can make it so it automatically goes red, which visually tells you we've got a problem here. Generally, people use red to put a bit of a no-no in. So have a go of that. Do your sums, construct your tables, share them with me. That would be fantastic.